So welcome everybody in this room, welcome everyone who will be seeing this later on the recorded version of this. Welcome to the second event in our new series From Pain to Hope, Israel Palestine in 2026, a series we intend to continue in the fall. The first event, as some of you might know, was in the forum yesterday, which was organized by the Institute of Politics and co-sponsored by the Carr-Ryan Center. My name is Mathias Risse, and I'm the director of the Carr-Ryan Center for Human Rights. Please allow me to say a few words about the series before turning then to today's subject. Now, the title of the series includes a question mark, very deliberately. Whether there indeed is a progression from pain to hope, of course, is very much the guiding question in this series. As a Human Rights Center, we have done programming on Israel-Palestine on a regular basis over the years, alongside many other areas of programming to which we have attended. But Israel-Palestine, to many people, is the world's most visible human rights conflict. So for us to do our job as a Human Rights Center, it very much behooves us to do events in this space. We also do our job with the understanding that human rights are not conditional. They do not depend on nationality, religion, ethnicity, political allegiance, or historical grievance. They do not depend on who was wronged first or who suffered more. Human rights attach to human beings as such. And accordingly, violations of human rights by anyone, against anyone, anywhere are unacceptable. There's no moral arithmetic to convert one group's suffering into a justification for another group's mistreatment. These commitments feel especially urgent in light of the recent political developments. This past weekend saw US and Israeli strikes on Iran, followed by retaliatory actions that heightened tensions across the region. Whatever one's political assessment of these events, a human rights perspective requires recognizing that civilian lives carry equal worth everywhere. Protections and obligations of humanitarian law do not become optional in moments of escalation. If we apply principles selectively, we weaken them universally. For the series to become a success would mean that a genuine exchange of views happen. After decades of pain and trauma on both sides, in light of highly differential exposure to the realities of this conflict, and then also before the background of the recent political developments, it has become very challenging to have genuine exchanges of opinions in this domain. People are often afraid to speak their minds. And it is unfortunately too much of a routine by now that those who do disagree with the position dismiss that position as biased and partisan, or dismiss the speakers themselves along such lines, instead of engaging with arguments or simply trying to learn something. But those of us who believe in human rights and the universalist standpoint associated with them, those of us who believe that human suffering per se is bad wherever it occurs, and that humans per se deserve to flourish, must not cede that ground. We must be able to have conversations with each other in the space in which participants take each other seriously, seek to learn from each other, and share the conviction that human rights indeed are for everyone. We endeavor in this series to create a balance of perspectives, and again, we will continue into the fall. The series includes events that focus on Israel, events that focus on Palestine, and events focused on both Israelis and Palestinians together. Again, I would like to invite all of you in this room right now and watching this online, and maybe joining us for other events in this series to help us make the series a success. Too much will be lost if universities, and especially Harvard University, cannot be the place where sincere and genuine exchanges on this conflict happen. We will cover a variety of topics in this series over time, and today's topic is friendship across conflict lines, a conversation that takes place on the Jewish holiday of Purim and in the middle of Ramadan. I'm delighted to welcome for this conversation my colleague from the medical school, Dr. Eman Ansari, and Guy Ben-Aharon, who share a remarkable friendship that has only grown stronger amid one of the world's most intractable crises. In a time when many feel pressure to pick a side, Eman and Guy offer a different model, one rooted in shared humanity rather than division. Eman Ansari is a Palestinian-American physician and assistant professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School. A mother of 4, she is also actively involved in joint Palestinian and Jewish community initiatives focused on justice, dignity, and the pursuit of a shared future rooted in mutual recognition and humanity. Then Guy Ben-Aharon is a stage director, writer, and cultural entrepreneur. As a theater director, Guy's work has been seen on stage in Austria, Canada, the UK, and the United States. His essays have been published in major publications in over a dozen languages. As a cultural entrepreneur, he is the founder and executive director of The Jar, an organization that inspires individuals to connect across difference. This event will be recorded, and for that reason, in this particular case later, when I turn to Q&A, I will also not ask to introduce yourselves. It's always appreciated if you do, but it's perfectly fine in this case if you don't do it. So, but let's start with the conversation up here, literally on these studio level chairs here.
Pretty nice.
So let's just bring you both first into the conversation. So Eman, just tell us a little bit about who are you? Just what keeps you busy, and a little bit
and
about
yourself. What were the first words Guy and I told each other?
Yeah, we get to that.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for coming on this beautiful, peaceful, snowy day to come and listen to me and talk about our friendship. I come here today knowing that Harvard had canceled so many programs about the Palestinians. Anything that mentioned the word Palestine is being pursued, canceled, erased, and that is unfair. That is not only unfair for the Palestinians like me, that is unfair for us to know about the world. We would be illiterate about the world if we don't know about Palestinians, Palestine, and a friendship like the friendship between me and Guy. So I am a pediatric pulmonologist intensivist at Harvard Medical School. I am the mother of 4. I wanted 0 and ended up Yes, and that's a true story. I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. I'm the second of 5 kids. And I grew up initially in Saudi Arabia, and as my father, a clinical pathologist, worked harder, made more money, he started exploring the world. And why not the best is something that my father always says. So he wanted us to travel to the best places. He wanted us to try the best things. So we started going to Switzerland, skiing in Switzerland and Austria. I went to operas and symphonies since I was a little kid. And that was all well and good until I decided to go to medicine. And my dad said, no, you get very high level of education. For sure, you have to be a university graduate, but not medicine. Because our daughters will not go out, will not serve. And eventually, my brother convinced him. I told him, let her go to medicine. She'll be so busy studying. She will not have time for boys, and she will be happy. So he said, okay. And I finished medical school, and he said, that's it. You marry and stay at home. And I told him, no, my brother went to Boston. I'm going to Boston. And he said, okay, the only way you would go to Boston is if you get married. So my husband now asked for my phone number to get to know me, and I told him, don't waste my time. Do you want to marry me? And he said, for sure. And I said, okay, done. And 28 years later, 4 kids, 7 boards, 3 master's degree. We made a life. We came to Boston, and we never left. When I came here to Boston, I was told by relatives, my parents.
She's very convincing.
Yeah. I was told that, say you're a Saudi. I'm a Saudi native. I was born there, and I'm a Saudi citizen. They said, say you're a Saudi. Never say you're a Palestinian. Because if Jews know that there's a Palestinian there, they want you dead. They just don't want us. And I said, sure, but I've heard a lot of categorical statements before. Women are not smart. You can never do well in medicine. You can do this, you can do that. So I tend to test these categorical statements for myself. And actually, the person who was my biggest advocate and champion when I was applying to residency at Tufts was Dr. Larry Wolf, an Orthodox Jewish physician. And I thought it was the and it turned out to be okay for her. But I thought, maybe they meant Israelis. And then I started my fellowship, and I met an Israeli classmate, and we became friends. And at the beginning, it was like some caution at the beginning, trying to test the water, talk to each other. Maybe he's the one who wants me dead. And that was not him. And from there on, life went on. I met people who are Palestinian who didn't like me, and Palestinian who did, Jews who didn't like me, Jews who did, people who didn't like me, people who did. So the labels clearly did not tell me the story, did not tell me who are the people. And I chose to move past the labels. And we'll get to our friendship when you prompt me.
Okay.
So,
Before I do that,
Yeah.
let's bring in Guy the same way. Guy, just please tell us a little bit about
I'm trained in theater, but she's very eloquent. So I grew up in Israel until the age of 9, and then my folks moved to the U.S. to the Boston area. So, hence the accent. And I went to Brooklyn Public Schools, and immediately found my home in the theater. The first show I did was Mary Poppins. I was the old banker who laughed to death. From a very young age, I looked old, so it worked well. And I always found myself at home with show people. And the reason for that, I think, is because people who are in theater live in an imaginary space. They don't live, we tend to not be so connected to reality. We always like to play. And that playful space was always interesting to me. And I think it's what led me to doing the work that I do today. For many years, I ran a theater company that was doing works from Israeli playwrights in English translation. So for 9 years, we did over 35 plays that toured in 7 states with 50 universities. And the whole idea behind it was really to get people talking to each other, to use theater as a prompt for exchange. And while it was a very gratifying 9 years of work, I found myself increasingly unhappy with doing dialogue around Israel and then Israel-Palestine, because people were often in a space where when they were brought together, they left completely depressed after my shows. They did not leave happy. And I was like, why? I didn't get into show business to make people unhappy. And that's what led me to founding an organization called The Jar, which Eman has been involved in since the very beginning. And it works to bring people together across different the arts, and to do so towards not to ignore where people are coming from and pains they might experience and lived experience they might have, but towards joyful connection, knowing that when we meet people who are not like us in the right context and doing such innovative things like breaking bread and experiencing personal stories, more likely than not, people are going to be good, and their good sides shine. On the side, I'm still Moonside as a stage director, so my next play is going to be in Vienna, where I'm flying to in 2 weeks for rehearsal. A play about Bernstein and Herbert von Karajan, who themselves had some political differences, seeing as one was a member of the Nazi Party and another was a Jew. And it's a comedy. I have decided that my life, I have gotten gray at age 35, and it's time for comedies. So that's out of the serious work, I guess, and love for bringing people together at the Jar in my theater world. I like to make people laugh because I think that's the best medicine that people need. And lastly, the last thing I do is I've had the great fortune in the last 2 years to write some personal essays. And I'm not an academic. I spent 3 years in higher education. And all I can do is simply share my experience. So I've gotten to share a few personal essays in the last, all prompted since October 7th. I wrote a piece a the first piece I wrote in the LA Times was about a play I directed about Gaza. Way before many people were paying attention to Gaza in 2015, I did a play about the siege of Gaza, which many people in the Jewish community were not very happy about. They said to me, how dare you stage a play like this? And my answer was that, people who do theater don't really abide by anybody else's rules. So there we dare. And I'm sad to say that much like Eman's comment about many programs that mention Palestine being canceled on this campus, the play I directed in 2015 about Gaza would not be staged today. It was a play that won Israel's Best New Play Prize in 2012, so it was still staged in Israel in 2011. I staged the American premiere in 2015, and when I contacted some theaters following October 7th in the United States, in Germany, and in actually the original Playhouse, where it was produced in Israel, everyone said there's no place for this play today. So I come to this room with a lot of people who say there's no place for that. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. And my experience in life is living in the imaginary. So that's just the realm I come from.
So how do you actually know each other?
My daughter used to go to a girls only school, and she became friends with another student, and they became best friends. The student is Jewish, my daughter is my daughter, and so Palestinian Muslim, and they did a project together on a book called Habibi, and that basically started a friendship that continues now 14 years later. And it also started a friendship between me and her mother that continued so far 14 years and counting. Even during the pandemic, we go out, walk, have breakfast or something together, me and Dorothy. So she invited me to one of your last plays, or the
very last play.
The very last play called The Return. And that's where I met Guy for the first time. And then after that, we exchanged numbers. I didn't ask him to marry me.
You check that box.
That role was taken.
I think it would take two husbands, though, to run after it.
And then I think we met in the lobby of my work afterwards, when you told me that you're no longer doing the theater and you're moving to do the jar. And from there on, we became friends, and I started attending some of the jar events and bringing my family, bringing my friends to your jar events. And then the friendship kept growing to meeting his parents, met his father, helping me organize my birthday trip. I can't tell you about it. Want me to tell you about it?
I think it's the best story.
Yeah. So you would look at me and you would say 25 at most.
4 children, married, and a 25.
So I turned 50 2 years ago. I was born May 4th, 1973. May the 4th be with me. So I thought 50 is a big number. And I'm a cancer survivor. I had breast cancer 18 years ago, and I was told it was terminal. Thankfully, it wasn't. So it's a big deal to live. I want to make my life meaningful every single day. And I wanted to make my birthday meaningful. Both of my parents are alive. Both of them are 1948 survivors. Both of them have not been able to go back and see their homes. My dad was born and raised in Safar, and he was 8, almost 9 years old when the war happened. And he was displaced to Syria. My mom was 3. Does not remember a lot, but remembers the hardship growing up. Both of them grew immense hardships. And then they got married in the 60s and moved to Saudi Arabia. That's how I became Saudi. So I felt that if I am to bike, and I learned how to bike 10 years ago, and I said, because in Saudi Arabia, it's too hot to bike, and women are not, at that time, we're not enhanced to bike. So I learned how to bike 10 years ago, and I thought, okay, I love biking. How about if I bike from Safad, where my dad was born, to Haifa, where my mom was born, in basically an homage to my parents, and
Eman was telling me that she was planning on doing this. And I said,
Yes.
you know who's an incredible bicyclist? My father. And that's how,
He's not a road bicycle. He's a
yes,
mountain.
he's a mountain biker.
Yeah. So he's like
The labels again,
the
again
tough
and again.
and the tough and rough cyclist. But I have to tell you, I've never been to Palestine before I was 45 years old. So I became a U.S. citizen, and I knew that as a U.S. citizen, I might be able to go. I don't, like, as a 1948 survivor, daughter of survivor, I have no easy access to go there. And I didn't know who was like me who went there and was able to go in. So there was a lot of research that went to it, a lot of reading books, talking to people, etc. And eventually I was told, go to Jordan and cross at the Alembi. And if you can get in there and you not return, then you know you can fly in. If you get returned, at least they will not stamp your passport. If you fly in and they return you and they stamp your passport, you can't enter for 10 years. So there are all these like specifics and ways and tips that different Palestinians give each other. And yes, all Palestinians are on one WhatsApp group. No, I'm joking. So eventually I went on multiple medical missions, and I met Guy's parents. I met Guy in Tel Aviv with your friend, remember, and we went out for dinner. I met his parents here and there. And then we ended up planning my birthday trip, a bike ride from Safed to Haifa. And then we went city to city, me and 10 of my friends, with his dad, with us, and his mom intermittently on our tour bus everywhere. We had a lot of fun. It was just the highest point in my life was to walk around in my own home, in my own land, in Safed, in Haifa, in Jerusalem, in Nablus, everywhere, and share that pride with my friends who came with me. Share that my pride with your dad, with your mom, and feel that there is hope. And then
So let me maybe then bring Guy back in. So Guy, I read your piece in the Atlantic, in which you talk about the complexity of the political situation in Israel, but also in your family, right? So the diversity of opinions represented there, and also how difficult it is for you to articulate opinions about resisting the war and criticizing the government. And so there's a lot of complexity like that in your family. How are they responding to a friendship with a Palestinian woman?
Well, I think you can, from Eman's story, you can hear, they completely embraced her. I should say that for those who haven't read it, the piece, I describe a dinner with my extended family, where a holiday dinner outside of Jerusalem, where I hear a very racist comment by one of my family members. I call it out to be racist, a snowball effect into yelling that I don't have the right to live in Israel as somebody who refused to do the army service. And those are not my family. That was my extended family. My parents, I should say, I didn't fall far from the tree in terms of my beliefs and my ethic of how to be in the world. And should I be so lucky to be actually closer to the tree? My mother has been active for 11 years with an organization called the Road to Recovery, where Israelis are volunteering to drive Palestinians between checkpoints to hospitals. Up until October 7th, she was also driving folks from Gaza to Israeli hospitals. And my mother, I should say, on October 11th, 4 days into October 7th, got into the car and continued driving Palestinians between checkpoints at hospitals. That is not a common experience. All she knows is action. My parents are very practical. They're two engineers. So when people talk policy, they're like, yeah, that's nice. What are you doing? Are you doing anything to help anybody? Similarly, my parents, both of them, were very active in peace now since its founding. So you get a sense for who they are. So since they don't have much issue with with our friendship, and they embraced it. And Eman has been to their home without me plenty of times. My
I
father.
think you're jealous. I think you're.
Your husband never invited me to dinner. And it's something that I think they are. It's part of their life. My parents, my mother. One of the patients that she drove passed away from cancer. A 12-year-old boy, and she was invited to the funeral. The funeral was in the West Bank. My mother doesn't go to the West Bank, and she was afraid. It's like, how am I going to go into Palestine? This is, legally she can go. Actually, legally she cannot go.
There are red
but
signs.
There's there are big red signs that say don't go. But one can go. Anyway, she asked friends, and a friend took her to this funeral. And here she is at a funeral in a small Palestinian village, the only Jewish person there, and because it was a religious affair, women were also separated from men, and so this was a whole new experience for her. So I would say, they're very adventurous with who they roll with. And my father, I hadn't even met Eman yet. When I said, I have a friend who's coming, and wants to do this bike trip. And he said, I'll help. I'll organize. I think he even organized the guide. So, they're very like, let's go. So there was no resistance there. That paints a nice rosy picture of my family, which is a nice rosy family. But beyond that, I can say from my experience, even more so in the last 2 years, but I have to say that since 2021, I experienced it even more fractures from the May 2021 war. I very quickly denounced that war and denounced the siege of Gaza 2 days into that war on National Public Radio, and many of my Israeli Jewish friends said, you're crazy. What do you think we can do if we wouldn't do that? All the justifications. And basically, a lot of people have political beliefs, which is great. I think everybody should be politicized, and right and left and progressive and conservative. I believe in two things. There's the politics of life and the politics of death. That's it. If you justify one person's death to say it's going to cause other people to live, you believe in the politics of death. Some call me radical, but I believe in the politics of life. And with that, I have, as I wrote in this piece in The Atlantic, lost a lot of friends who said, who chose to not have any more contact with me. Israeli Jewish friends who thought that this is, there's no place for such statements. Where's your allegiance? Especially at a time like this. The other part of that piece is my experience abroad. There's a conference that I went to, and out of 40 participants, 3 people wouldn't look me in the eye and wouldn't say anything. And it completely ignored my experience, my being just for being Israeli. Which is ironic because I would be their greatest ally, but someone who refused to go to the army. Interestingly enough, at that conference, there was a Palestinian from Jenin. She and I spent the entire conference together. All of our breaks, we were walking into town together. But it was difficult for others to imagine that this is possible, right? The sort of today's culture of cancel culture, or like, this man should not be here. If he lives in Israel, he doesn't deserve to be here.
They label you.
They label you, and in that sense, again, it's very close to the politics of death. It's sort of justifying that somebody's existence is at somebody else's expense.
On that note, actually, let me turn back to Eman. So the way you were just talking about yourself and your life story indicates that you think about the world around you with a very deep sense of history. You are embedded in a particular geographic context. Your family goes back there. You spoke of some members of your family as survivors of 48, and the fact that you grew up in Saudi Arabia rather than there, and that you had to talk about your identity in a certain way. This speaks to a sense that you have this deep sense of history, and you refer to the region when you did the bike ride there. You said, to do this in my land, and so the my land I found quite striking. So what is when you think about the region as a Palestinian woman, what is your kind of rocking approach to the heavy duty question? What is your rocking approach to the future? What is your sense about how this can rock out politically? And how do you see your own life related to that vision for the future?
Very interesting question. So I'm not a politician.
Sadly.
Sadly, I'm not a politician.
My father said that if Eman would run, he'd vote for her.
I'm not a politician, but at the same time, I'm a person in this world, and I have 4 children, and I would love to know that I did not die 18 years ago when I had my cancer. I want to do something meaningful and be part of something meaningful that can leave this world better for them. So growing up in Saudi Arabia, even though my nationality was Saudi Arabian, people will always know from my last name that I'm not tribal, that I'm not from the land. So it's not an option for me to know that I'm Palestinian. It's in my last name, basically. And they would ask me, where is your last name from? Like, I'm Sabti, like you, Sabti. Where is your last name from? Which is something that happens here, by the way. Like, people would see your last name, like, where are you from? Czech, German,
Mayflower.
Exactly. So even right now, if I am to say to an American who would ask me, so where are you from? I would say, I'm from Newton, I'm an American. And they were like, no, where are you from? So we get a lot of criticism, Palestinians. Why do you keep saying you're Palestinian? You grew up in Saudi Arabia. You were not born in Palestine. Well, and neither did so many Jews who went back 2,000 years later. Like, if my parents were born there less than 100 years ago, I think I can say I'm a Palestinian as well. But even if I choose not to say, people will know from my last name in Saudi Arabia, and within the Arab community here, they would know. But above all of that, I have to say, we grew up very proud for being Palestinians. My parents taught us that we are from the land of the prophets. Safed is the most beautiful city in the world. We started going to Switzerland. Baba said, that's nothing. You have to go and see Safed. Safed is way nicer than Switzerland.
It's true.
Yeah.
No offense to any.
You can see, the Sea of Galilee. It's beautiful, but it's beautiful through the eyes of my dad. Just seeing it through the eyes of his dad and his dad and his dad's dad, and it's the family. And where do I see the future? I honestly hope, if I am to paint a future, I would hope for a future that is similar to the future, to the past maybe of 200 years ago, but better. No borders. People can live with dignity, equal rights everywhere in the world. You can drive from Safed to Damascus to Istanbul. No one is asking you, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're Christian, you're Palestinian, you're Turkish, you're whatever. No one is being thrown out of the country by ICE. No one is not allowed. No one does not belong. No one is less of a human, less of the others. That would be a great world. That would be a world in which I would hope my kids live in. I am Palestinian, and my kids will say they're Palestinian, not because we want to push back at a bad narrative, etc. No, but because my grandfather is that is the place they called home. And in our history, in our recent history, it is home. So that would be my short
This
answer.
is just that now other people live there. So how do they make it work together? Is there
But other people have lived there. So there is a great book. I love books. So that's the other thing. Like I'm so impressed that I've gone now. How 37
You're like
years
Ezra
without-
Klein. You always end with 3
without
book
saying
recommendations.
the name of a book. There is a great book by Noor Masalha called Palestine: A 4,000-Year History, and through it he recounts the history of that piece of land for longer than 4,000 years. People have come and gone. Like if you look at pictures coming out of Lebanon now, you will see people who look black, people who look brown, people who look as if they're from India, people who look white, people who look with colored blue eyes, blonde hair. My kids have red hair, the older two, they have red hair. Because it is where 3 continents intersect, Europe, Asia, Africa, and where people have come and gone, and some people stayed. My husband's family stayed for 1,400 years. Some families have been there for even longer. And I think I would always say that decisions were made at every fork in the road for the past 128 years. Because people could have come to us. People could have come to Palestine to live and get a shelter from the terrible anti-Semitism of Europe. Anti-Semitism is a very European thing. And they could have come and lived in Palestine with the rest of us. That would not have been a problem. I think the concern is when people say, I want it for me only. If Palestinians say, it's for us only, let them go back where they came from. Or if Jews say, this is for us only, God promised it to us, gave us a deed, and that's for us only, let the Palestinians go elsewhere in the Arab world. I think that would be where problems would happen.
and have happened?
And have happened. But I think in my eyes, and I hope in Guy's eyes, you can tell we care about similar things. We see things in a very similar way, not necessarily identical, but in a very similar way. I see his humanity no less than mine, and my humanity no more than his. And if he was born and raised 2nd generation, 3rd generation over there, who am I to tell him leave? But also who he is to tell me I can't go back and see my home. I can go back and live in my home. That's in Safad.
Let me ask the question to you guys. So, do you have a vision about where hope might be leading us? Is there a political vision for the future of the territory that you?
You're asking a ridiculous question.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking it anyway.
Do you know what day it is? Do you know what's happening right now? I kid and I don't kid. And also, who cares? I mean, truly, who cares what the two of us have a vision for? I mean, I'm asking people, what are they doing?
Right.
Because whatever they think, that sounds lovely. And whatever vision they have, that's also lovely. I'm not against visionaries. I have the personality disorder of having founded 3 different companies. But I think at this moment, it's like, what are the actions people are taking? So I split my time between Boston and living in Israel. And it's a question of what I do there. Well, here I actually don't think of this question as much as I sort of feel like when I'm here, my only hope is to have events like this, or earlier today I spoke on. I was interviewed for GBH about the war, and again saying I'm against this war. I don't think there's any justification for any type of war. No matter whose leader and whose terrible leader would be killed or not killed, there's no justification for what's happening. I can tell you in day to day what I see. I live in my apartment there is in a building which has several apartments. I live on the top. I live in a made-up apartment. It's like a little roof attic. It's wonderful. Below me is a Japanese shiatsu practitioner who, through very random circumstances, made her way to live in this in this region. Next to her is an Israeli Jewish clothes designer, the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors. Also in our building is a Palestinian Armenian who had to flee her home from northern Palestine, Israel, and found herself in Jaffa. And also is somebody who's been living in Jaffa for as long as their family does, who are Muslim. So we have Muslims, Christians, Jews. And that's not to say, ooh, what a happy coexistence. But if you ask me what a vision is, I'd like to see my building, sort of multiplied, where everyone in my building also will have access to the same legal system, to the same options. Because while Tel Aviv, the municipality which has acquired Jaffa as part of the municipality, will boast itself for being very liberal, there are zoning laws which do not allow my Palestinian neighbors to adjust the architecture to their homes. And even worse, there are campaigns to unhouse them, to take away their homes. That is not a part of my vision of the neighborhood. Hope. I wish I had a different answer for you. My uncle, whose name is Shalom, peace. My grandfather we always called Abu Salim, who spoke Arabic perfectly without a trace of an accent. He also spoke 9 other languages, but we called him Abu Salim. My uncle stands till today smoking Parliament unfiltered cigarettes on his balcony. While missiles are going on, he doesn't run anywhere. He says, if a missile hits me, this is part of my part of my fate. And he looks and he says, none of this will be here. No. The exact same sentence is uttered by the grocery store that is the little bodega that's downstairs from my apartment. And Ali, who is a Palestinian Muslim. And he looks at me, and he doesn't run for shelter either. So when I was there in June and we were running for shelter, Ali was sitting on his little bench. And the bench says Ali's bench on it. And he's there with his pack of cigarettes. And his wife, Angie, is like, Ali, run! He's like, I'm not going anywhere. My people have been running on this land too much to and fro. I'm sitting right here. And when you ask him what he thinks will happen, he says, I don't know. I gotta go unpack some onions. So I think there's it's a long about answer to say, I'm not sure it's the question of today.
But I have to say, may I
Yeah,
add to that? So, growing up in Saudi Arabia, for the longest time, women wanted to drive. I drove in my car with mustache on, and I wasn't part of the campaign.
You make that sound like a
Yeah, I just wanted to rebel somehow. But we knew that if people try, like grassroots, to change things, it will take a long time. With a leader who has a vision, it can take a lot shorter. We do not have the leaders right now, but where the hope is actually a realistic hope rather than an imaginary hope is that these conversations are not unique. And people finding each other, especially I have to say after October 7th, because Guy went with me to a vigil that has been happening every single Sunday in front of the State House, in which Israelis, Americans, Palestinians, and many other groups are standing in solidarity for the humanity of people in Gaza. Ceasefire initially, rebuild Gaza, release the Palestinian hostages from jails, over 10,000 of them. And they use, when people talk about anti-Semitism and what's happening on college campuses, I'm going to tell you that in the Students for Palestine, most of the students are Jewish, actually. So a lot is happening that is in the direction of how can we solve this, rather than us versus them. The leaders are not there yet, and hopefully this grassroots, which will take longer if the leaders are not on board, but hopefully maybe we'll get leaders on board, and will get us somewhere good.
Let me ask you one final question, then I want to open to the audience. Question really for both of you. Did your relationship change in any way through October 7th, 2023? Did you process that differently, that made you question things, or have tensions you didn't have before?
I can look at no. Do you want to say what happened when we went to record at Louisiana?
So we spoke very shortly after October 7th happened, checked in to see how are you doing? How's your family? First, always the human first. It's your friend. You're not like, we're not checking on the status of a state. You're checking on your friend. And I think there was a sense of relief when so many people were not checking in on each other because of the label of some sort. Here we were checking in on each other, and we could hear each other's concern for each other's families. Three weeks into October 7th, Eman and I went to record an interview on WBUR. And I said to her, I remember saying to her before, this is going to be a change for you. You've had an incredible career as a physician, but you haven't had to deal with public comments. And that might bring about a lot of emotions. And we went into the studio, and we had a lovely interview with Tiziana Dieri. And she asked us questions. We went through it, and the minute the interview was over, Eman burst into tears, and I went over and hugged her, and we just stood there because there really is nothing more to say. When people are asking us, well, what about your family history? What about your connection to this place? What about your vision? It's like all of that is needed. And at the end, the thing, both of us need love. With our great love for the same land. Is knowing that we have a partner for today. I grew up with in a time when people in Israel constantly said there was no partner for peace. I grew up with that narrative. There's no partner for peace. There's no partner for peace. We offer them this. They don't want this. We offer them this. That. And that doesn't allow you to get through the day. And I find that narrative to be like, how do people wake up in the morning? As opposed to, there are many partners for peace, and there are many leaders for war.
That's a long-winded answer to say I joined the void of the jar.
Yeah. That's true. We amplified our work together. Since October 7th, Eman joined the board of the jar, and with her help and the help of many other people, from a year where we served 1,500 people, we served 2,500 people to experience art and connection with people who are not like And one of the things I hear over and over again, and this past weekend with 2 jar happenings, I didn't know rooms like this existed. I didn't know I could be in rooms where there's a black great grandma and a young white man, and they're sharing each other's stories. And in this country, that doesn't seem like it's possible. People think that's impossible. In this country, people look at me, and when I tell them what I do, they're like, "That can't be. That people don't do that. That doesn't work." Well, actually, yes. Room by room. All we need is more of these rooms to happen, and they're based in friendship. Like that's what makes people come out and change the world. It's ultimately it's love.
The reason I cry every time we talk about our friendship is that it feels like one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. My hope, my everything in my life was at its peak on my birthday trip. And then October 7th happened, and that was the lowest point in my life. Because I knew what's coming to my people will be hell. And sadly, what I knew ended up happening. And the question is, where do we go from here? And I think the reason why Guy and I show up time and again, time and again, time and again, is because we will not stop until we find a way for the two people to be able to live together. It shouldn't be either or. It can be yes and. But I will always be a Palestinian. My kids will always be Palestinian. Their family is still in Jerusalem. Like it's not even that they left in 1948. His family is in Tel Aviv. The question is, how can we reach that tipping point in which the leaders discover that this is what the people want? Stop what you're doing. Stop the greed. Stop all of this. This is what the people want. 128 years is a long time. 78 years is a long time. 52 years is a long time. And I'm looking at what's happening right now. 2 of my sisters are in Dubai. My parents are in Saudi Arabia. My 2 brothers are in Saudi Arabia. I have family in Qatar, family in Jordan. We're terrified. We're terrified. Everywhere in the Gulf, we're terrified. Everywhere in the Levant, we're terrified. My friends are from Iraq. They're terrified. And this constant boiling of violence in that region needs to stop. And the problem that I have, my biggest problem is that my tax dollars are funding the killing of my own people. So that is also a burden I get to live with.
So as I said at the beginning, we normally ask people to introduce themselves. If they ask a question, you are still very much invited and encouraged to do that. But since we are recording, we are often not insisting on that. So floor is open for your questions. Yes, please.
So I have been at the JAR a number of times. I work at an international boarding school where students from Ukraine live together with students from Russia, Palestine, and Israel, all of the Middle East, all over Asia, Mexico, Haiti, some of the other shithole countries. Thank you, President. And what has been so powerful about those experiences is the love, is the connection, is the understanding that, people who are at war with each other in another place can be connected deeply, deeply in a room, in a school. And so we're going on break in a few days. I just got back from Dubai. And my students were supposed to go home after such a long time to their various countries, and they cannot. They cannot because the airports are shut, or their parents don't want them to. So I'm full of gratitude for these experiences. Trying to remember to breathe and love I guess I'm wondering at this point if there are questions that you had hoped would come up today for either of you, things that you would hope to talk about, but you really hadn't been able to, or just anything that you're wishing people had asked.
Some of the questions, are
Especially around
people-
hope. Sorry, just.
Some of the questions I would say are from people who would not show up.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, the reason for that, a lot of people think that like just simply sitting with an Israeli, I've abandoned the cause. And I don't think that that is a vision for a future. Like, and then what do? How are we going to solve the problem if we will not be able to talk with each other? If we will not, and plus, like, is he only an Israeli or is he a human who is 35 years old, doesn't have much of
He isn't married.
Yeah, isn't married.
He's not a doctor.
Like there's so much to someone's personality and why we like people, why we're friends with people, why we're not friends with people, than simply you're an American or she's a Saudi or he's an Israeli. So those people, I wish they would come and ask us, how do we see that this is a way forward when they think that their hardline approach is the only way forward? Because I honestly do not see their approach as a viable approach. I think their approach is an approach of someone on both sides, I have to say. The approach of someone who's like wounded, hurt, in pain, in fear. And I think at some point we need to try to move past that and find a solution.
Okay, that's some discussion.
I'm going to read you all a poem. After every war, someone has to clean up. Things won't straighten themselves up after all. Someone has to push the rubble to the side of the road so the corpse-filled wagons can pass. Someone has to get mired in scum and ashes, sofa springs, splintered glass, and bloody rags. Someone has to drag in a girder to prop up a wall. Someone has to glaze a window, rehang a door. Photogenic it's not, and takes years. All the cameras have left for another war. We'll need the bridges back and new railway stations. Sleeves will go ragged from rolling them up. Someone, broom in hand, still recalls the way it was. Someone else listens and nods with unsevered head. But already there are those nearby starting to mill about who will find it dull. From out of the bushes, sometimes someone still unearths rusted out arguments and carries them to the garbage pile. Those who knew what was going on here must make way for those who know little, and less than little, and finally, as little as nothing. In the grass that has overgrown causes and effects, someone must be stretched out, blades of grass in his mouth, gazing at the clouds. It's a poem called The End and the Beginning by Szymborska, the Polish poet. When you ask for a vision, this vision will one day come to life. There will be the people who roll up their sleeves to make some sense of this senselessness. And then the cameras will go away. And then someone will find it boring. And someone will still remember what happened. And then less and less and less. And in my great hope is that person who remembers less and less and less. Because it's so peaceful that you don't have to think about it. And if I know one thing about the two of us, we're probably the people with rolled up sleeves. And the hope is for more and more of those people. I had 3 days ago, a good friend of mine, had a missile hit on her street. An Iranian missile hit in the middle of Tel Aviv, 2 doors down from her building. Very luckily, she was not home. Several hours later, a day later, she was able to return to something and find her cat. A 13-year-old cat was amongst the rubble. So today I had a wonderful photo of her adorable, big, fluffy cat on the hotel bed where she's staying for who knows how long. I can tell you, none of our leaders are sending their children to have that same experience. And yeah, it's very hard to make sense of anything while that's so actively going on. And that's in the greatest of circumstance of somebody who had a shelter to go to.
Great. Eman, let me maybe just invite you to speak a few concluding words.
So I'm a pediatrician. Ultimately, it comes back to our children. When we were talking about the vision, I said it's what I'm going to leave our children with. In Iran, a school of girls was bombed and kids were killed. In Palestine and Gaza, over 65,000, were killed. And so many of them are children. In the tens of the thousands were children, other than the name. So I'm gonna, I looked at one. So you're not the only one who's sharing. I'm gonna share what Kofi Annan said. And I'll tell you why it matters. So Kofi Annan, who was the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, which right now I don't know how highly we think of them, I'm not sure. He said, there is no trust more sacred than the one the world holds with children. There's no duty more important than ensuring that their rights are respected, that their welfare is protected, that their lives are free from fear and want, and then they can grow up in peace. What makes this friendship a strong friendship is that I see him as equal to me, and he sees me as equal to him. I don't feel I'm inferior to him, and neither he thinks that way, and vice versa. And I think every human being was born with dignity. Every Arab, every Muslim, every Jews, every Christian, every atheist, every religion, even the all of us are of equal dignity. We all were born with the same dignity, and I think it's on us to see each other as equal, as the same, deserving of the same human rights, the same dignity, the same health, the same life, the same security. And I hope more and more of us share that vision and can push the leaders basically to change accordingly.
Please join me in thanking our 2 interlocutors. Thank you.